With sales volumes at 26-year lows, active listings on the rise, what does that mean for prices? We're going to talk about this and so much more in this month's market update video. All right, before we dive in, a friendly reminder to like this YouTube video, subscribe to our channel below. It really helps us and the YouTube algorithm, so thank you. All right, we're going to dive into the December numbers. And if you've been listening to the last several months, I may sound like a broken record, but I think there's some really important things to talk about this month in particular. Okay, so sales volume, as I suggested in my intro, we are at 26 lows. The last time that Toronto real estate had less than 60,000, well, we had 61,000s for the year. Last time we had less than 60,000 sales volume for the whole year was the year 2000. So so sales volumes are down pretty significantly, and we had a pretty interesting year. Obviously, we had an election which caused uncertainty. We had our friendly neighbors down to the south, instituting tariffs, so that obviously played a big impact, and our economy was a little bit sluggish. So all those things factored into, lower than anticipated sales volume. Now, we are down 9% year over year. And if you remember last year's December amazing video that I recorded, that was the lowest December on record. And again, this is the lowest December on record in the last 25 years. And we were down 9%. So, we're seeing sales sluggish. And, coupled with that, obviously, if you're seeing sales slow down, active listings are climbing pretty rapidly. So it's not all doom and gloom, but, obviously when you get listings creep up and volumes come down, that usually is not a great benchmark for what to expect with prices. Now, before I dive into prices, because that's what everyone wants to know about, obviously the month of December is a slow month for real estate, but the fact that we've had such a spike from a year ago, isn't really that surprising. As I said, I think there was a lot more in, call it, January 2025 than there is in January 2026. And that's not to say we've hit the bottom. I mean, we may have, who knows? But certainly there's some things to think about when you're looking at where we are in the market as a whole. Now, prices is one thing, and prices are down roughly 5% year over year. So, what I find actually about this, and I've really talked about the condo market at length during these videos over the last, I feel like, 2, but I've really talked about it the last 6 months. Now, I'm not going to talk about condos, but what I have noticed and what's interesting is there is, I would say, a fair amount of weakness also in the freehold market. Like, we didn't quite see that weakness like a year ago, but we're seeing it now. And you can't take like 1 month and say we've got a trend, but certainly if you look at what's happened from September till now, there is a, and we're seeing sales slow in freeholds. We are seeing prices come down in freeholds at a similar, right? Which I find fascinating. If anything, one thing that I have noticed is that condos are slightly on some of the key metrics, which is saying to me that one of two things. A lot of people that are trying or were their condos have taken them off the market and re-rented them, right? We can speak from sort of our own professional experience, and that due to the condo markets, a lot of sellers, maybe they're investors, or maybe they're upsizing, are choosing to keep their condos and to re-rent them. And so that is we'll talk about the rental market in another video, but what we're seeing now is sellers for condos are realizing sort of the weakness that we're seeing. And so that's now trickling into the freehold market, which is, I think, fascinating. Really, there was a lot more strength earlier in the year, and we've now seen that change. Now, I'm not saying that you know, blanket market in freeholds 416 and in GTA as a whole is, are weak. There are certain pockets that are behaving very, very well. Um, but on the whole, there is a fair amount of weakness. So you take out of call it the top three pockets, like there's quite a bit of months of inventory is rising in those neighborhoods, and also prices coming down as we see here. Now, one of the things I like to look at is how we're doing month over month. Now, now we're down 3%, which is not nothing to sort of glean too much into. But I think, usually at the end of, the year, we typically see prices come down. Like usually the real estate cycle in a normal real estate calendar year is that prices tend to peak in the spring. They slow down and come down a little bit in the summer, and then we see a second peak in the fall, and then things sort of slow down on the price side. So that's usually what we see. Now, this is slightly more than what we are accustomed to, and I wouldn't put too much weight into this. I think it's just it's average sales, so it's not reflective of the entire market. But taking a basket of houses and condos that have sold in a month, and then you're taking the same basket, or not same basket, but a different basket of condos and houses that sold last year, and so like asset mix may be different, and so like you can't take this with complete certainty. But you know anecdotally, when we're looking at the market and we have clients both buying and selling, like sure, there is greater weakness, I think, in December than we've seen in the early part of the fall. Now, will that translate into continued weakness into January, February? Most likely. I mean, let's be real. There's certainly a fair amount of questions with regards to not only our economy, but there's global tensions. There's the Middle East. There's also Greenland, and all those things factor in, right? Like there's a fair amount of uncertainty. There's volatility in all those things affect the buyer psyche. So, these are things that we're monitoring very, very carefully. But, certainly we expect, continued weakness in freehold and the condo market as we turn the calendar year into Q1 2026. Now, we will examine, obviously, these numbers in much next month. But, we wanted to just give you a quick summary of where things are at the end of the year. And stay tuned for my 2026 market predictions video, which is coming out in just under 2 weeks. I've been doing lots of research for that. I'm really excited to share with you what my thoughts are on the markets. You have to watch that next month. But anyways, in the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate the questions as always and the feedback. As I said, subscribe below and see you next month. Thanks again, and bye for now.